Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Månegarm, Ynglingaättens öde, out April 15th on Napalm Records. This album has 9 tracks, 49 minutes in length, and this is the band's 10th full-length studio album. They are a Swedish Viking pagan folk black metal band. Now before we get started with the review, I just want to apologize for my pronunciation of the title of the record, which I'm sure I butchered, and the titles of the songs going forward. I love listening to this band. I hate doing the reviews because it just gets me out of my comfort zone, and my pronunciation is absolutely atrocious. So before we even get started, I want to apologize for that. But now, what does this album have in store for the listener? Well, it starts off by being a concept record, a record that surrounds itself around an Old Norse poem. It tells the stories within that poem, and more so than just telling the stories, it paints a vivid picture. Even for those out there that don't understand the lyrics, my case included, listening to this album, it's almost impossible not to feel the emotion, not to feel what it's telling you just by experiencing the sound, by just experiencing the atmosphere, the way the vocals come across, the way the vocals interact with the lyrical content really allows the overall concept to come to life and be one that could be appreciated by any listener, regardless of your knowledge of the lyrics or not. Now, once you get into the construction of this album, the record has incredible flow. This album is so well put together, so well constructed, that it doesn't feel like you're listening to it for 49 minutes. It feels a lot shorter than that. And to me, that's always a sign of a great record, an album that's well put together, that's well designed, that has a great experience, and it connects with the listener from start to finish. This album has ebbs and flows with every single song. Not every track is going to give you the same experience, because not every track has the same story as the backdrop. They're all interconnected because they're all part of a much larger picture, but they're all different chapters at the same time. But that doesn't make this album feel disconnected. It doesn't make the album feel broken. The fluidity that the record has, while still offering different perspectives, is really outstanding, and it makes the playability of the record go through the roof. You're never going to get tired of listening to this album. Regardless of how many times you go through it, you're always going to feel like the experience is new, is fresh, perhaps the first time that you're listening to it, even though it could be the 100th time that you're playing through it. Now, once you get into the soundscape, the album is very diverse, like I was mentioning earlier. Every song is defined by the story, by the concept behind it, and they attach to that a different soundscape, a different approach, in order for them to paint a much vivid picture of what those songs are all about, of what the concept is all about, of what the lyrics are trying to tell you. Important element in order to create that fluidity, in order to create different perspectives, different dynamics, is a very organic sounding album. And it's an album that is not really driven by one single element. It's rather driven by all of them put together. The way the album comes together as far as sound, it's really about the collective and not about the individualities. Now, there are some individual elements within the construction of the soundscape of this album that define the experience or define the atmosphere song in and song out, but overall you're captivated by what everything brings to the table. You're captivated by how everything comes together, how everything drives the experience. The other aspect about the soundscape on this record is that depending on how dark the story is, on how dark the song wants to be, the soundscape is going to change ever so slightly. I felt that in darker tracks, the sound was more blunt. It felt more as one, harder to break it apart, harder to define the roles of drums, guitars, folk elements. Everything felt more together. Everything felt more blended in, allowing the track to feel heavier, allowing the tracks to feel darker. The songs that have more of an upbeat atmosphere to it, that have more of a brighter spot in terms of how they're constructed and in terms of how they sound, are better defined. They have better shapes. The sound still works well with one another, all the different elements working together, but now they're not working in unison, they're working in parallel, making the sound be more clear, making the sound be more crisp, and therefore adding a lot more brightness to the overall experience. This is something you're going to notice throughout the entire record. This shift, this paradigm shift between bringing the sound together as one and separating it, really determines the darkness or brightness that the songs have, having a direct impact in the atmosphere and in the storytelling aspect of each individual song. Definitely a key characteristic of this album, one that works really well in the overall concept of the record, and it doesn't hurt the playability whatsoever. Now, even though this is an album that is driven by all the elements together, I really have to mention the drums and bass as one and then the guitars as the other. These elements play a very important role even though they don't really push the record over one another. But the drums and bass on this album sound so crisp, they sound so good. They bring a sense of groundness, they bring a sense of thickness, they bring sometimes even grooviness, but perhaps most of all, what the drums and bass are doing throughout this entire record is really allowing the soundscape to feel united, to feel warmth, to feel like it has a soul, that it has a heartbeat, that it moves the listener, that it captivates the listener, that it almost embraces the listener at every single turn. On the other hand, you have the guitars that feel like they push the record a little bit more, giving a little bit more movement, but not overpowering what the entire album is trying to do as a whole. The guitar solos are phenomenal throughout this record. They really add value to the tracks. They add melody to the tracks. They add a little bit of an explosion of life to some of the songs. And that is a very important element that on a record like this sometimes falls into second plan because everything else is so captivating that the guitar solos almost get lost within the fog of the construction of these songs. But on this record, they really jump into the forefront, allowing the listener to pay a little bit more attention to the added value that they're bringing to every single track. Now, the vocals are phenomenal. It's a staple. When you listen to this band, you can always expect that the vocal performance is going to be out of this world. They have a vocalist that is perhaps not just a vocalist in terms of bringing another instrument to the table and using his voice as an instrument, which he does, but they also have a vocalist who's a storyteller. And on this album, I really feel like he's a huge part of your perception of what the concept is all about, of how these songs feel. He helps you navigate through them. He helps break down the lyrical content. He helps make you understand exactly where he's trying to take you, where the stories are taking the listener. Phenomenal performance from start to finish. Really consistent in terms of the quality, but with a wide range, with a wide palette of approaches that gives life at every single turn. All around, this is just a magnificent record. I mean, has there ever been a record that these guys have released that hasn't been phenomenal? This one is just a par with everything else that they've released up until this point. Perhaps a little bit more complex, perhaps an album that offers a little bit more than we've seen before, perhaps an album that has two songs that I think are some of the best that they've ever written in their career. So it's a magnificent album, an album that's full of life, full of energy, full of heart, and full of soul. And you're going to notice that in the sound, in the lyrics, in the vocals, and in the atmosphere. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Freyrs' Blood. This is the opener track, the longest track on the record. 10 minutes is this song, and it's an incredible, outstanding track. One of the best, there's two, one of the best written songs by this band ever. It's a track that takes you on an absolute journey. If they had released this track alone as an EP, it would just be outstanding on its own. You add this to the complexity of a record and it just really blows the roof off. This track is phenomenal. It takes you through different genres, through different approaches, through different feelings, through different emotions, bringing in folk, bringing pagan, Viking elements, bringing black metal elements, allowing you to digest all of these different facets of the band in one single song, but always feel like the track is moving forward and taking you forward with it. An incredible experience musically and vocally, because vocally the song is as dynamic as it is as far as the sound is concerned. It's just a breathtaking track all around. You're honestly not even going to notice that it's 10 minutes long because you're going to be so engulfed in it. You're going to be so engulfed in the experience of listening to it that time is not even going to be of the essence. You're just going to forget about it altogether. Next you have Addis Fall, a heavy folk-driven track. It's a very methodic song. It has a lot of heaviness to it, and maybe because of that heaviness it loses some of the momentum. But it works really well because it's built like an anthem. It's built like an anthem musically, and it's built like an anthem vocally. The way you look at it, you see this song almost morphing two different elements. When the track gets heavier, it feels like it has more of a black metal influence to it. It's more gritty, it's a darker, it's a little bit heavier in terms of bringing the listener down. It brings the mood down. When it starts to shift into a more folky, melodic approach, the song gains a little bit more life. It becomes a little bit more melodic. It doesn't gain speed, but it feels like it's a lot lighter, so it feels like you're moving through it a lot faster. This dynamic really makes the song feel engaging because it's offering you ebbs and flows that doesn't allow the track to feel linear or constant from start to finish. It also has a phenomenal solo. Really important in order to put the cherry on top of an incredible track. Also a track that has a phenomenal chorus. The melody of the chorus is outstanding, musically and vocally. It really stands out. It really allows you to feel that you've reached that top of the mountain. You came from that bottom, from that darkness, from that heaviness at the pit. You reached that top of the mountain, and now you can breathe in that fresh air. That's the style, that's the movement that this track has. Last but not least, Hågkomst av et liv. This is technically the closing track of the album. I mean, there's still another track after this, but that is an English version of the second track of the record. So this is technically the closing track on the album. It's an all acoustic track. It's a duet. It's a ballad featuring Eleanor Vidfors, and it's phenomenal. This one and Freyrs' Blood are the two best written tracks that I think this band has ever put together. This song is just phenomenal. I mean, you start the album with an absolutely epic track, 10 minutes long opus, and then you finish with a duet, a stripped down acoustic duet that just leaves your skin crawling. You're gonna have goosebumps listening to this song. It's beautiful as far as the melody is concerned because it's so stripped down, it's so organic, it's so earthy in terms of how it moves and how it sounds, the atmosphere that it creates, and then having two vocalists like this that just absolutely destroy the track with their power, with their emotion, adding to the emotion that the sound have, just makes this song stand out in the crowd. Phenomenal, phenomenal way of closing off a phenomenal record. This is it. This is Månegarm's latest album. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.